FSU law professor Dan Markel was going through a bitter custody battle with his ex-wife, Wendi Adelson. They had two young boys and were living in Tallahassee, Florida, near the FSU campus. One of the big issues the two were fighting about in court was relocation. Wendi wanted to move back to Miami, more than 400 miles away from Tallahassee. Dan did not. He wanted to stay there and wanted to be a full-time father for his two boys, who he loved very much. In court, the judge ruled in favor of Dan, and Wendi was prohibited from relocating with the boys back down to South Florida. And that's when things in this custody battle went from bitter to deadly. Prosecutors say Wendi's brother, Charlie, was dating a woman named Katherine Magbanua, who had two children with a man named Sigfredo Garcia, who had a best friend named Luis Rivera, who was a Latin King gang member. Charlie allegedly paid Katherine, who got Sigfredo and Luis to drive from Miami to Tallahassee to murder Dan. Katherine, Sigfredo, and Luis have all been convicted, and now Charlie is on trial, being charged with being the mastermind. Tonight, we take a look at Charlie's ex, Katherine Magbanua, who took the stand and told the jury everything, including details about her love triangle with Sigfredo and Charlie. Was she credible? Does her story make sense? Will Charlie be convicted as the mastermind of this murder for hire?
I'm Wendi Adelson. Thank you so much for joining us tonight here on Closing Arguments. Big hour ahead. And I begin each time we cover this story and cover this trial with a reminder as to why Professor Dan Markel was murdered. It's because he was a loving father. He wanted to be there for his children. That's why he was killed. This was a custody battle. And both sides are saying the same thing with respect to that it was this custody battle that became the reason that his life was taken. Once again, perspective. How many children out there? How many children would just hope and pray to have a father who wanted to spend time with them, a father who wanted to be there full time, a father who would do anything to prevent anyone from separating him from his children? That's Dan Markel. Now, all along, and what we, at Court TV, when we take a look at these stories, these cases, and these trials, a lot of times they fall into different categories. And this one has always fallen into the category of murder for hire. Because the people, according to prosecutors, with the alleged motive in all of this, did not physically commit the murder. They hired someone to do it. And we see many cases like this. Sometimes it's organized crime. We'll order a hit, a contract killing. Sometimes it's a spousal situation like this, and one side, unhappy but unwilling to do it themselves. So they hire someone to do it. And all along, I've been talking about this being a murder for hire case, but we could put it in another category, which is a love triangle, because that exists in this as well. When you talk about Katherine Magbanua being in this love triangle with two other men, Charlie and Sigfredo. Sigfredo, the man who she had a long relationship with and had children with. And then Charlie, kind of the new kid on the block in her love life. And there's an intersection. It's not like, one is done and over. No, they're kind of going simultaneously. And that's really strange in all of this. It's really strange because of the role everyone's playing. Like Sigfredo in love with Katherine, the love of his life, the mother of his children. Yet she's having this thing with Charlie, the rich dentist. Yet Sigfredo will commit a contract murder for the man who's sleeping with the mother of his children? What? bizarre. We're going to take a closer look at that tonight. We're also going to take a look at this because Katherine gets on the stand. Brand new story this time. She's testified before. She has testified before. Not her first time. Third time getting inside the courtroom in Tallahassee and you know, swearing to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. Well, which truth is it? You know, that's I think it's a question for the jury in all of this, because she testified again. This time, though, for the first time, testifying for the prosecution. Because the first two times she was testifying for the defense, her own defense. Jury didn't buy it. We'll see if they buy it now. Let's bring in Court TV legal correspondent Julia Janae, who's joining us live from outside that courthouse in Tallahassee, Florida. Julia, wow, every day in this case, I mean, it's witness after witness, big witness after big witness. And Katherine Magbanua arguably could be the biggest witness because she's that link, that alleged link between Katherine Magbanua and the men who physically took the life of Dan Markel. So for those of you who've been watching, you know, Julia Janae comes in and gives us her 3 big takeaways from the day, because I think that's the best way to get a flavor for what's really happening down there and what's important. So without any further ado, Julia Janae, what do you have for us?
Wendi, the biggest moment of the day, Katherine Magbanua on the stand and us learning what may be her motivation behind testifying today. Like you mentioned, this is her 3rd time testifying. She testified in 2019, 2022, but this was her first time testifying in cuffs, restrained. There she is walking on the stand. We could hear the clanking sometimes of those shackles while she was testifying. I don't know if that says anything about the security measures, because we sometimes see inmates testify who don't have to be cuffed. But in this testimony today, she sounds just as straightforward, same demeanor as we heard from her when she was testifying in a suit with 2 braids down her back, in a way that sounded really the same, saying yes ma'am to the attorney. But this time it's not her attorney that she's saying yes ma'am to, it's the prosecutor. We learned that she was approached by Charlie Adelson to see if she knew anyone who could harm someone, and she's the one who said yes. It's not that Charlie came to her and said, I know that your child's father has a seedy background. It's seen, according to her testimony, that she didn't even let Charlie Adelson know that Fredo Garcia was the person that she had in mind. She said today that she was not promised anything by the state to testify, and that she just wanted the truth to come out, that she wanted the family to get some kind of closure, Dan Markel's family. But the defense, Daniel Rashbaum, got up on in the well of the courtroom to talk about what he believes her motivation is for testifying this way now.
And you realize that there are only 2 ways to get out of that prison, right? Well, one way was in a coffin, and the other way was cooperating against Charlie Adelson, right?
No, sir. I wanted the truth to finally come out.
What are the only 2 ways that you can ever get out of prison, Miss Magbanua?
My appeal?
Oh, well, we'll get to that, too. You have an appeal pending right now, right?
Yes, sir.
That claims that you're innocent.
Yes, sir.
Let's just make this clear to the jury. Ms. Kappelman has called you as a witness against this man who's presumed innocent. You've just testified that you did a murder, and you have an appeal pending right now in this county claiming your innocence.
The jurors really stand to attention when the defense attorney brings that passion, which he often does in his cross-examination of these state witnesses. That appeal, Vinny, I looked up, it's still pending with the First District Court of Appeals. There hasn't been a lot of movement on it since the beginning of this year. And Sigfredo Garcia, her child's father, who she says the reason she had to keep lying about this instead of taking the immunity that was offered to her by the state, that first initial appeal has been closed, and he has another one pending now for ineffective assistance of counsel.
Well, I mean, if she wins her appeal and gets a new trial, the biggest piece of evidence against her will be this testimony they'll probably play the video of her admitting to all this. I don't understand her. Now, let's clarify this. She had an opportunity to cooperate before ever being convicted, right? And she would have walked?
She would have gotten a similar deal to Wendi Adelson, where she received immunity for her testimony, so it likely would have been the use and derivative use testimony, and if she got on there to testify to everything that happened, it wouldn't have been able to be used against her in prosecution. But at the time, she told Court TV, her attorneys told Court TV, that because of Sigfredo Garcia's pending appeal and the issues with her child's father's case, she couldn't turn state's evidence because that would essentially be throwing him under the bus. But to the defense's point, by 2022, his first initial appeal had already been denied, and that second one, or closed rather, and that second one is still pending today. So nothing really has changed from her 2022 testimony.
But the use immunity doesn't give you immunity from prosecution. They can still use all the other evidence against her.
And that could have been one of the reasons that her legal team didn't think it was necessarily the right thing to do. But
that's not a. I mean, the deal is
the prosecutor asked her about it.
Yeah, a deal would be you testify for us, and we promise not to prosecute you, or we'll prosecute you for something less. You know, like Luis Rivera got a deal, right? 19 years. And it's concurrent, so it's really a free crime. It's a free murder for Luis Rivera. I mean, he's doing the time at the same time as his federal time. So, but that's not what she was offered. She wasn't offered, like, we're not going to prosecute you. We just won't use what you say against you.
Her legal team felt that it was not in her best interest to take it, and she did turn it down. But in hindsight, it seems that would have been a better route for her, especially since she is now doing the exact same thing that they wanted her to do many years ago.
Except with less credibility because she lied twice on the stand, according to prosecutors. Okay. That's a big one. I mean, Katherine Magbanua, this is a huge, huge deal, her on the stand today, because she can be the person that the defense makes the jury focus on to get away from Charlie, and you focus on her, the one in the purple and the shackles, who says whatever she needs to say at the moment she says it. Okay, what do you have for number 2 tonight?
Number 2 is this recorded call. Really the first time the jury is hearing Charlie Adelson's voice. They're hearing what we believe is the wiretap in this case. We're going to hear a lot more tomorrow of those wiretaps. But this was a call that was made from one of his employees. Erica Johnson was on the stand today. She was with the Adelson Institute, that family dental practice. And the FBI arrived at her office asking questions about Katherine Magbanua and whether she worked there at the Institute. There were checks that were being given to her. The prosecution says those were her payoff checks. The defense says they were extorted blackmail checks. But either way, the FBI came into the office, and then Ms. Johnson called Charlie. Take a listen.
Hey, what's going on? Hey, the FBI is here asking for records for Katie. For what? That she works here. I wouldn't give anything. Yeah, and
I don't know.
the ex, did she work there? I was like, yeah, she works there, but I don't know what you want. So remember we sent that.
Erica.
Yeah.
Do me a favor. I'm not there right now, and I'm in surgery. But it's not my office. It's my dad's office. So I can't give anything out.
Erica Johnson seemed to still be very chummy with the defense. When she walked out, she gave a friendly wave to the defense table. She and another co-worker sat in the gallery and watched more of this trial on the defense side of the courtroom. And she said she loved working for Charlie Adelson. So a little bit of a character witness, a good character witness in the state's case in chief, Vinny.
Sure, yeah. But that reaction on the phone, like, it's kind of like a humana, and then he's like, You can hear like the gears moving in his brain as he's trying to figure out, okay, how do I handle? It doesn't sound like an innocent person there. I think that's going to be problematic for him, but we'll see what the jury thought of it. Any reactions from them on hearing this recording or other recordings?
Yeah, there was one woman, juror, who sits on the front row. Her mouth was open when she was listening to his voice and him seeming to struggle to figure out what to do now that the FBI are there at his place of employment, or rather his parents' place of employment. And other jurors were taking a lot of notes, so they understood how important this was. And you could hear like a pin drop inside of the courtroom, because this was really the first recording like that we've heard, but they're going to hear a lot more tomorrow. Could be very powerful.
Okay, either way, depending upon what's on those recordings. All right, what do you have for your final takeaway tonight?
The telltale texts. We ended the day with all of these text messages that Charlie Adelson sent and received around the time of Dan Markel's murder. Really, we started from months before. Katherine Magbanua on the stand said that it was around Halloween of 2013, so about 9 months beforehand, that he approached her, that this murder for hire scheme started. And there's a text message that they really ended the note on today that had to do with Donna Adelson sending a text message to Charlie after the initial attempt. Luis Rivera and Katherine Magbanua testified that they went up to Tallahassee to commit this murder on Dan Markel in June. And it didn't work out. They saw the kids there, so they went back to Miami. And there was a text message from Donna Adelson saying on June 8th, 2014, "I know you'll come through." And so the state is arguing that this was her saying that that's the first attempt, but I know you're going to keep trying and you will complete this scheme. Listen now to a text message that Wendi sent to Dan Markel around the time of the murders, but it was about a week beforehand, where she's asking about the kids, and she was at a party with Charlie Adelson, so perhaps he would have known what this text was about.
Was there a text sent on July 6th by Wendi Adelson to Dan Markel?
Yes.
All right. Can you show that to us? Okay, what does this text say?
From Wendi Adelson, it inquires of Mr. Markel, are you in Tallahassee July 14th through the 18th? I just wanted to know if I can have the kiddos on the 16th. Thanks.
Okay, and he says yes, you can?
He does.
All right, the dates that we see that Wendi Adelson is asking Dan Markel about, what is significant about those dates? July 14th through 18th.
Those would encompass the second trip to Tallahassee where Mr. Markel was murdered.
And there were also text messages after the fact that this jury is seeing on the screen. One of those between Charlie and Katherine Magbanua in February of 2015, so nearly 9 months after the murder. They're very chummy. She's saying, I know how to always make you smile. They're saying, I love you too. The state wanting to emphasize this doesn't sound like two people who are being either blackmailing each other or exhorting one of the other. This sounds like two people who are in a very good and close relationship.
Fascinating stuff. And as we sit and we watch Charlie Adelson on trial, and we see the other members of the family and some very interesting communications, I think everyone in their back of their minds is wondering, okay, if the prosecution is able to convict Charlie Adelson, there may be another case. There may be another indictment in all of this. I don't think that's off the table. Is that what you're hearing as well?
I definitely know that the prosecution put in that motion in limine where they agreed to not call Donna and Harvey. They acknowledged that there was this question about future prosecutions. So that seemed to signal that there is still the possibility, and we know the Markel family, they want to see more prosecutions in this case. Wow.
Big, big stuff tonight. Julie Janae live in Tallahassee. Great to see you. Thank you so much. We'll see you again tomorrow, obviously. Okay. When we come back, we're going to talk about body language. And this, I think, will be really interesting. Katherine Magbanua testifying in court, 2019 versus 2023, saying two completely different things out of her mouth. The words are different. What about her body? That's next. Plus, coming up next hour.
In Sarasota, Florida, the Take Care of Maya trial continues as the hospital continues to call its witnesses to try to prove they did nothing wrong to Maya and her family.
Did you at any time ever tell Maya Kowalski that you wanted to be her mother?
No, absolutely not.
A brilliant law professor gunned down.
In the midst of a bitter custody battle.
Now the victim's former brother-in-law, a prominent South Florida dentist,
accused of being the mastermind behind the murder.
Florida prosecutors are setting their sights on Charlie Adelson.
3 people have already been convicted for their role in the plot.
Now, will Charlie Adelson's own words come back to haunt him?
The Dentist Mastermind Murder Trial. Live coverage weekday mornings on Court TV.
I told you I lied in my first and second trial to save myself.
Well, let's get to the second trial. Just like you're lying here to save yourself, right?
I'm not saving myself, I'm telling the truth this time.
Right, because now, all of a sudden, after 8 years, you have developed a conscience. I think that's what you told the jury.
No, it's because the father of my children was on death penalty at that time on my first trial, so I couldn't give up. If it was just Charlie, like I said from the trial, go ahead and arrest him. Nobody ever did.
Katherine Magbanua admitting to the jury that she lied before on the stand. Well, we've got the video. We're going to take a look at it, but we're going to analyze it. Let me bring in my guest joining us in Miami, Florida, body language and communications expert and instructor at the Body Language Institute, Tiffany Lee, back with us. Tiffany, great to see you.
Good to see you. Let's do this.
Okay, so I'm going to show 2 videos back to back. The first will be Katherine Magbanua in 2019. And then Katherine Magbanua today. Let's take a look.
Did you have anything to do with the murder of Dan Markel?
No, ma'am.
Did you get the father of your children, Mr. Garcia, to commit a murder on behalf of Mr. Charlie Adelson?
No, ma'am.
Did you have a trial in your case?
Yes, ma'am.
Did you testify?
Yes, ma'am.
You testified on your own behalf?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, and when you testified, were you truthful with the jury?
No, ma'am, I was not.
Did you take the same oath that you just took today in your own trial?
Yes, ma'am.
What was your defense when you were tried?
That I had nothing to do with it.
All right, that we got it right in reference to Charlie Adelson and we got it right in reference to the killers,
yes,
but you
ma'am.
weren't in the middle.
Yes, ma'am.
Was that true?
No, ma'am, it was not.
Were you in the middle?
Yes, ma'am, I was.
Sigfredo Garcia was involved.
Yes, ma'am, he was.
So why tell the truth now?
I believe that the truth needed to come out now so that the family can get some type of closure.
Why didn't the truth need to come out last year or the year before or the year before that?
I was trying to defend myself.
You were trying to get off?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, 2019 versus 2023. What do you see?
Okay, let's get into this. So, 2019, we see a lot of her when she's saying the yes ma'am and the no ma'am. Her mouth is saying one thing, but then her head is going in a different direction. So she's saying no ma'am in 2019, but then she's nodding her head yes. Versus in the video from now, all of her movements are congruent. So when they're asking her, why are you coming forward now? Or was what you said true then? Is this true? She's saying yes, and her head is saying yes. So I'm willing to believe that she is telling the truth now.
Much more credible. That's because this is a big part of this case. This is crucial. 2019,
Exactly.
she said nothing to do with it. 2023, I'm in the middle of all of it. And what you're saying is her body is making sense in 2023.
Exactly.
Okay.
Everything is congruent.
Now, she actually testified 3 times. So now I'm going to show you 3 different videos back to back to back. 2019 trial, 2022 trial, and then again today in 2023. Let's take a look.
Do you have information that Charlie Adelson was involved in this?
Do I have information? I mean, based on everything that we've been seeing, but I don't have personal information.
Based on everything you've seen, do you think Charlie was involved in this?
Yes.
Do you think Charlie was lying to you?
Yes.
To this day, do you think he's guilty?
Yes, ma'am.
Do you believe that he should be prosecuted for his involvement in the murder of Dan Markel?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Do you think he should come forward and let the jury know that you had nothing to do with this?
Yes, ma'am.
Who came up with the idea to kill Dan Markel?
Charlie.
So Sigfredo Garcia didn't come up with the idea?
No, ma'am, he did not.
Luis Rivera didn't come up with the idea?
No, ma'am, he did not.
When did the defendant first bring this idea up to you?
My first recollection was around Halloween of 2013.
Around Halloween or on the actual?
On Halloween, yes, ma'am.
All right. What's your recollection of how that came up?
We were at a Halloween party in Lincoln Road, and right before we were about to go, he got in the car with me and he asked me a question.
What was the question?
Do you know anybody that can harm someone?
And did you know anybody that could harm someone?
Yes, ma'am, I did.
Who was that?
Sigfredo.
Okay, the before and after. The first
So
two
many notes, so let's-
first 2 trials, she's testifying on her own behalf. This trial testifying for the prosecution.
Exactly. So from the first trial, the 2019, you see her when they're asking her a question and she then repeats the question. When we see this is something that we call, this is a technique of stalling. Stalling and also trying to distance yourself from the question. So instead of just saying a yes or a no, she goes through the well, maybe, and from what I recall. So that's one thing to really pay attention to. And then in that same one, she says, I didn't have info, but she shakes her head yes. Now we're going to move on to the second one. She's doing a lot of the same, the yes ma'am, the no ma'am. And what I want you to take notice to is her tone between the second trial and then moving into the third trial. Even her tone starts to change. So when she started in 2019, it was more of a stern type of tone. And now when she comes up, it's very soft and it's yes ma'am and no ma'am and yes and I did or I didn't versus no ma'am, yes ma'am, where we saw in the beginning. So her tone is even lowering. So this is, again, an indicator that in this testimony in 2023, she is being honest.
Well, we'll see how the jury interprets all of it because, I mean, Charlie Adelson's on trial, but her testimony is also on trial, especially in light of the fact that she has to admit that she's a liar. So they've got to get a reason to believe. Do you find that the body language is something that we pick up on, even if we're not experts, that someone will come across more credibly if their body language is congruent, as you said, versus someone who is lying?
Absolutely. Have you ever met someone and you're like, I just don't like this person. There's something about this person. I can't put it together. I can't figure it out, but it's something about this person that I don't like. A lot of times when you have that feeling, it's because of their body language, their body did something that you may not have known what it was. But again, on that subconscious level, your brain is telling you something is going on. So it definitely, when you have that feeling, pay attention to it and just notice it and see what's going on in the moment when you have that feeling.
Tiffany Lee, great to have you on. Great insight.
Thank you.
Really appreciate it. We'll see you again really, really soon. All right, folks, when we come back, we're going to talk about this love triangle aspect and really dive into the relationship. Katherine and Sigfredo, Katherine and Charlie, Charlie and Sigfredo. What is going on with these 3 and what does it all mean? That's next.
Were you intentionally trying to characterize this job as being related to someone other than Charlie Adelson?
I believe so, yes.
Because Sigfredo Garcia would not have wanted to do anything to help out Charlie Adelson?
Yes, ma'am.
A brilliant law professor gunned down.
In the midst of a bitter custody battle.
Now the victim's former brother-in-law, a prominent South Florida dentist,
accused of being the mastermind behind the murder.
Florida prosecutors are setting their sights on Charlie Adelson.
3 people have already been convicted for their role in the plot.
Now, will Charlie Adelson's own words come back to haunt him?
The Dentist Mastermind Murder Trial. Live coverage weekday mornings on Court TV.
By the way, when you dated Charlie Adelson, he thought you were broken up with Sigfredo Garcia, right?
I was broken up with him.
Well, did you have sexual relations with Sigfredo Garcia while dating Charlie Adelson?
Yes, I did.
Charlie didn't know that, right?
I mean, that's not something I would tell him.
were they on a break? Were they on a break or something? Like, what's going on? I'm trying to understand this, right? So Katherine Magbanua says, no, we weren't together. We were just having sex and we had children together, but we weren't together. And of course, I could see not telling Charlie about it, but like, are you broken up or not broken up? Katherine Magbanua on the stand today in this love triangle, really, because she's dating Charlie Adelson, the rich dentist with this red sports car. I think it's a red, it might be a Ferrari, I'm not sure. Red sports car. And then Sigfredo Garcia, the father of her two children. They've been together off and on again. Sometimes they're on a break since high school for like 10 years. Okay, I want you to listen to Luis Rivera. This is Sigfredo's best friend, knows Katherine Magbanua and knows Sigfredo for years, talking about this relationship and how it all sort of relates to the murder for hire. Take a listen.
Sigfredo told you that Katie was cheating on him with someone called the dentist.
Yes, sir.
According to what Sigfredo told you, Katie was sleeping with the dentist at the same time she was sleeping with Sigfredo, right?
Yes, sir.
So Sigfredo knew that Katie was cheating on him.
Yes, sir.
And he wasn't too happy about it, right?
Nope.
Sigfredo was devastated when he learned about Katie's new relationship.
Yeah, anybody will, right?
I agree. Sigfredo started drinking too much.
Every day.
He started doing drugs.
Yes, sir.
He was acting crazy and unstable.
Yes, sir.
He couldn't keep a job. In fact, you had to fire him from a job, help get him fired from a job, right?
Yes, sir.
Because he was drinking even while at work.
Yes, sir.
And he was fighting a lot.
Yes, sir.
Katie told Sigfredo that she would only take him back if he did this job for her, right?
Yeah.
Need some help with this. Joining me in Orlando, Florida, psychotherapist, CEO of Life Counseling Solutions, Dr. Janie Lacey, and in Los Angeles, California, forensic psychiatrist, trial expert witness, and columnist, Dr. Carol Lieberman. Okay, it's a love triangle, no doubt, but I don't know if the other guys kind of know. Sigfredo apparently knows about a dentist. Charlie doesn't know about Sigfredo. And now we hear from Luis that Sigfredo knew, and the only way to get back with Katie was to do this job for him. Dr. Carol Lieberman, I'll start with you. This is a mess. This is like sex and murder all mishmash together.
Yes. You know, whether or not he becomes, he's found guilty of the murder or is playing a part in the murder, he certainly is guilty of having bad judgment when it comes to picking girlfriends. You know, in all of Florida, there was no other woman who would like a nice dentist. It doesn't really make sense. She is, you know, first of all, I think she is still lying. Maybe not with everything that she says in this third trial, but she certainly is lying with some of the things because she contradicts herself as the time goes by, as she's on the stand. But you know, she's a woman scorned. I mean, the easy answer to this, first of all, she manipulates both of them in different ways. She takes money from the dentist, and meanwhile she's having sex and sharing her children with Sigfredo. But you know, this is really this is a woman scorned, because after the crime, or even before the crime, she was saying that the dentist, let's just call him, was pulling away from her. He was saying he wants to keep it casual. So when she started realizing, even before the murder, that he was going to be keeping it casual, that he wasn't going to marry her, and she'd have this wonderful lifestyle, then all bets were off. So I think that the jury is going to be really annoyed with her, kind of like they were talking about one of the agents who was examining her, Agent Sanford, who was fed up with her lying, and he walked out, during one of the investigations.
Jury may very well feel the same way about her. Let's listen to more of Katherine Magbanua here on the stand, Dr. Janie Lacey. Again, this is fascinating stuff.
At first, Charlie was the pursuer. Is that fair to say? He pursued you.
Yes, sir.
Over time, you became more serious.
I believe so.
And he made it clear to you over time, namely in the spring of 2014, that he didn't want anything different than casual, right?
I mean, I think we were both in agreement with that, yes.
But you had questions about it. You asked him, right?
I believe so.
And he told you, I like the way things are.
Yes, sir.
Now, Sigfredo came to know that you were dating Charlie, correct?
Yes, sir.
And during your second trial, you testified that you told Sigfredo about Charlie to make Sigfredo mad.
Probably.
You wanted to throw it in his face that you were dating a successful dentist, right?
That I was dating somebody, period, because I never really dated anybody after Sigfredo.
Sigfredo hated Charlie.
I mean, yes.
You told Charlie on one occasion, if you see him, run. Isn't that what you told him?
Not that I can recall, no.
Is it possible that you told him that?
No, but he would be scared of Sigfredo, yes.
Dr. Janie Lacey, what do you think Charlie's all about in this relationship?
Well, I'm going to make some assumptions with Charlie in the sense of that he was holding a lot of power in this relationship, because here she mentions that he was the pursuer and she responded to that. And especially if he wooed her and she was in this vulnerable potential position coming from what sounds like a dysfunctional, toxic relationship. And then here she has someone who's wooing her that probably was coming in and fulfilling what she probably wasn't getting in her relationship. And she responded to that. And as we're kind of hearing in their the conversation is that sometimes women will get attached to these relationships, and even though someone may say that it's casual, they may want more because of the benefits that they're getting. So it sounds like at this point in the conversation is that Charlie had all the power and she probably did not. So then she gets into this toxic dynamic and playing and manipulating the different parts because potentially in her unconscious mind, she felt like a victim.
Okay, let's take a listen now to Luis Rivera talking about how they were spying on Katie and Charlie, him and Sigfredo.
While you were sitting in Sigfredo's truck watching Katie and the dentist, Sigfredo told you he was going to run him over when they got up, right?
Yes, sir.
And what did you tell him in response?
I ain't going to do it. I'm going to get off the truck.
But he was serious.
Yes, sir.
That's what he was like, right? He was angry.
He was a good man. But anybody get angry if your wife is doing another man.
And he was angry. He wanted to hurt the dentist, right?
Yeah.
Are you aware that he actually did try to run him off the road a couple months later in July 1st, 2014? Did he ever tell you about that incident with a jet ski?
No.
Okay.
All right, Dr. Carol Lieberman, how about this Sigfredo-Charlie dynamic now?
Yes. he obviously felt less than, felt like intimidated by, or felt like he compared poorly to this rich dentist. It's really interesting how every time she's asked about, well, you knew he had a lot of money, right? Oh, well, I don't know. I mean, I know he had an okay job or a good job, but I don't know how much money he had. She kept downplaying that. And really, that's what she was after. She was a gold digger. Sigfredo his masculinity was wounded. He didn't want to lose out to this dentist.
Dr. Janie Lacey, I'll give you the final word on the dynamics here, Charlie and Sigfredo and the whole deal here.
Well, there's an obvious, definite economical difference and probably certain levels of educational difference, but the person who had the power in here was Katie. So being able to use probably what she knew, what we're going to assume was inadequacies of her husband and whatever dynamic they had that she felt wounded, is able to kind of use that to bruise his ego, and then being able to play both parts where she's probably getting some things that she wanted from Charlie, and then being able to use those parts to kind of throw in her husband's face to kind of get him in line, because she was the holder of the secrets. She was sleeping with two men. They did not know that. One found out. Of course, his heart is going to be broken to understand and hear that his woman was with another, his wife was with another man, and he lost control, and hearing all these emotions coming up. And then, as we heard his friend mentioning, coping with alcohol and other types of things, it was an explosive situation that was just waiting to happen, unfortunately.
And at the end of the day, the jury's got to figure out, well, these two guys who hate each other and all that, did one hire the other to kill the enemy of his family? Strange dynamic, but thank you for all your help, Dr. Carol Lieberman. Dr. Jenny Lacey, we'll see you again really, really soon.